Death Note is one of the most popular animes of all time, with its focus being on the super detective L trying to catch the mass murderer Kira. It's quite entertaining to see the two of them try and outsmart the other. Of course, this has caused people to ask questions such as who was really smarter, what would happen if their situations were different, and what would happen if you were to place both of them in a completely different scenario. So today I'll be placing Light Yagami and L into the Hope's Peak Academy, where they will try and survive and figure out the mystery behind the school. If you're going to enjoy this video, then make sure to like, subscribe. This took a hell of a lot of me to make, so I'd really appreciate it, and leave a comment with your opinions of this. I'll need to go over some guidelines first, as while this might seem like a straightforward question or topic, I do need to put some things in place in order to make it more interesting / fair. For starters, the power scaling. L and Light strength, speed and durability will all be made around par with the rest of the cast of the Danganronpa characters, as Danganronpa characters are far stronger than L and Light, and would make the video wildly uninteresting by comparison. Secondly, L and Light will be taking the place of Makoto and Kyoko in this discussion, as they were able to figure out everything without L and Light, so having them would be a bit overkill. Thirdly, there's the topic of good and evil Light. You see, when Light gives up possession of the Death Note, he loses all of his memories surrounding it. While his overall intellect is the same, his personality and motives are quite different, so I will cover both accordingly. And lastly, Light will not have access to the Death Note, as the Death Note would make this video 10 times longer going into each individual possibility, and you could just make something up such as Monokuma confiscates at the start, whatever. Besides, good Light wouldn't even use it as well or even have it, so there's that. Now then, let's get on with talking about how well Light and L would do if they were in Danganronpa. In order to get into Hope's Peak Academy, you need to be a high school student and be the best at what you do. Now, for Light Yagami, this is not a problem at all. Firstly, he is a high school student, and secondly, not only is he the top of his class at everything, but he's revered as one of, if not the best tennis player in the area, or at least in Japan. So you could consider him as the ultimate tennis player. L, on the other hand, is much harder to tell since he's not really a school student. That said, however, during the Kira investigation, when he has suspicions on Light being Kira, he's able to attend a school in order to get closer to him, so you could make the argument that he would get into the school that way. I bring all this up because it's actually really important what their ultimate abilities would be. L could be the ultimate detective, since there's only really a few things we know he's good at, being martial arts, which we already have Sakura for, and chess, and we already have the Ultra Gambler as well. On the other hand, you could argue that L is the ultimate lucky student, since Makoto isn't there. Either way, I'll cover both scenarios when the time comes. Light and L would wake up after having been passed out somewhere on the first floor of Hope's Peak, much like everyone else. If L is the ultimate detective, he will notice that he cannot remember what his quote-unquote ultimate is, which automatically raises suspicion since, he's missing a part of his memory. Either way, both Light and L would meet for the first time, at least what they think is for the first time, and would then go on to meet the others and introduce themselves. Side note, Elle would just go by Miyazaki or some fake name, saying that Celeste was able to go by Celeste, despite that not being her real name. The group then head to the gymnasium where they would then be introduced to the killing game. The premise is that everyone is trapped within the school with no way out. The only way to get out is to kill someone and then get away with it in a trial held afterwards. If the killer gets caught, however, they will be executed. So both Light and Elle would likely show little reaction, with Good Light obviously reacting much more if you're, using him, as he's much less psychotic than Evil Light. The first difference between canon and this situation is Mondo and Byakuya's scuffle, where Makoto would get knocked out for trying to calm them down. Both Elle and Light are master manipulators and would have likely researched these people attending Hopespeak since it's publicly available knowledge. Considering Light scales to, if not higher than Yer, who was speculated able to manipulate Mello, a hothead like Mondo but is also a genius, and Elle could manipulate the FBI itself from trying to kill him to protecting him, I don't doubt that Elle and Light would be able to de-escalate the situation, which allows them more time to investigate the school than Makoto did. The two of them would investigate the school, likely separately, but with Elle having an eye on Light, still suspecting him to be Kira. They both go around the place and realise that the vast majority of it is covered or surrounded by security cameras, with the outlier of the bathrooms. While this is a bit of annoyance, it actually isn't that big a deal for Light and Elle. You see, Elle, when he figured out how Kira kills people, requiring a face and a name, placed a hidden camera all around Light's room to see if he could catch him killing people. When Light heard about this from Yuke, he planned ahead and placed a small camera on a bag of chips which showed the news, which is how he learned the criminals' faces and names. With this, he basically had to pretend to be studying while killing people with the Death Note, while trying not to raise too much attention to the bag of crisps, all the while the Giga genius Elle is watching him. Keep in mind that Elle is the greatest detective in the world and has solved countless cases, even some with no apparent clues. This is an insane feat for Light that he's able to get away with it. Point is, the cameras aren't that big a threat to them as they are to everyone else. They would also find a map of Hopespeak School, which confirms the fact that they are in the school and haven't been kidnapped. After some time, Monokuma would introduce the first motive in order to get the killing started, by showing everyone specialised videos of their most loved ones dead and being told that they'll figure out what happened once they get out of the school. Now here for the first time, the lack of Makoto here makes things a bit complicated. You see, Sayaka got close to Makoto due to possibly having a crush on him, because it's kind of implied to, which happens because Sayaka and Makoto get to talking, realising they both went to the same school as each other. This then leads to Sayaka getting Makoto a sword in his room for self-defence, which then leads to her inevitable death. Now, Light is an incredible manipulator and is a stereotypical handsome man in terms of anime tropes, so you could argue you can get close to Sayaka in that regard in order for everything to go as canon, but considering there are literally 14 other students, it would be a bit random. Either way, here is two situations. Either one, Light would get close to Sayaka, Sayaka would swap rooms with him that night since she felt scared, or option two, Sayaka just does the same but with someone else. In option one, Sayaka would be found dead with a knife in her stomach in the bathroom, and even if she doesn't leave the infamous 1137 clue, which basically hands you who killed her, it's still a massive chance that Elle and Light would be able to figure out who did it. Firstly, the room having all of the hair on the ground removed, and also the bathroom door being broken into, instantly rules out that Light is not the killer. Rules out that Light is the killer, rather, as he would not need to break into his own bathroom door, as he knows how to open it, nor would he need to get rid of his own hairs, because it's his own room. This also makes it pretty easy to figure out that Sayaka intended to kill someone initially, due to Sayaka leaving a note for someone to come to her room, swapping the nameplates around for Sayaka and Light's rooms, and Hina stating that she only saw one person in the kitchen last night. Considering there is a kitchen knife missing, and Sayaka was killed by a kitchen knife, asking someone to come to her room, it is quite likely that she initially planned to kill them, but then they got the better of her and killed her. The golden patterns on the broken wrist would also prove that she was hit with a golden sword with it in its sheath, since the gold pattern rubs off very easily, and if it not were in its sheath, it would have just cut through her hand rather than just being hit. In order to catch the culprit, Elle and Light would have to figure out a few things. Firstly, Light's toolkit was not used at all, thus could not have been used to break into the bathroom, so by checking all of the other guys' toolkits, you can very easily deduce who it is from that alone, if not narrow it down massively. There's also the fact that when it comes to disposing evidence, they put the evidence in the incinerator, which was opened via throwing a crystal ball at it from far away through a cage. It's noted that it's very hard for a normal person to do, but not as hard for someone who's really good at that kind of thing, like a baseball player, for example. There's also the tiny bit of the killer's white shirt, which fell out of the incinerator, further narrowing it down via who just wears that kind of clothes. With this, I think it's very plausible that Ellen Light would be able to catch and expose Leon as the killer, as, you know, they would be right. Not to mention this earlier, but if the killer gets away with the murder, everyone dies, so, you know, I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but here we are. The second scenario, they would have the missing clues involving the door and the toolkit, which are massively make things harder, especially if they're being in a different room. You could also argue the sword isn't there, and thus Leon wouldn't have the thing to defend himself from Sayaka's attack, and Sayaka could very well kill him. Of course, we don't know what Sayaka would have done after his death, but I think it would be quite easy to figure out it was her. With Leon or Sayaka caught and executed, it should be worthy to note as well that Junko died during this investigation while trying to fight Monokuma, and the class gets to live another day. After each class trial, a new part of the school gets opened up. With this, the warehouse and bathhouse are opened up along with the second floor. Notable new rooms involve the bathhouse, the library, the archive, and the boys' bathroom. Going in order, the bathhouse is notable because it's one of the few rooms without a camera or monitor in there. The library contains a letter talking about Hope's Peak being shut down, which is obviously quite strange because they are in Hope's Peak. There's also a laptop in there as well, which is broken and can't be used. For now. The archive in this place also we'll get back to, but all we need to know for now is that it contains old police and government files. Finally, the boys' bathroom is big since not only there are no monitors in there, but there's a hidden room in the back with a false wall. Considering Light uses traps with false bottoms before and Elle is literally the smartest man alive, they would likely both figure out this room and get into the secret room immediately. Granted, it doesn't give them too much, only allowing them access to files revolving around the school's history and note-taking about how you must not leave the school. Bayaka then stops coming to daily meetings that the group have, and Light or Elle would either find him in the library reading using an extension cord or with, connected to a lamp in order to help him read. This doesn't seem like much for now, but stay with me. After this, the next motive is revealed. If there is no kill in 24 hours, Monokuma will release everyone's darkest secret to each other. This is by far the most likely Light is to kill anyone in order to protect him from being discovered as Kira. However, he can also just very well wait it out, as not only would you have to plan to get away with it with lots of people there, you could very well just wait for a better time and an easier time to get away with the murder, since he does have the time to. This might not apply to Good Light, but it is a little bit up in the air. The next morning, Chihiro is found dead in the girls' locker room, tied up on the wall, having her head been hit with a dumbbell. Much like in canon, Byakuya helps with the investigation in order to fully carry out his plan. He would likely choose Light here, much like he chose Makoto in canon. He would take Light to the archives and show him the killings of the infamous serial killer named Genocide Jack. He does this because the way Chihiro is positioned is Genocide Jack's calling card, as no one else in the public has access to these files. It can only really be Genocide Jack who did such a thing. However, Chihiro was killed in such a way that has many differences from the Genocide Jack cases, which Light might just point out right there and then, or he just might wait until the trial to give Byakuya the middle finger. Once the trial comes around, Byakuya would instantly take over the control of the trial and say it's Genocide Jack, exposing Genocide Jack's identity as Toko Fukawa. However, Light would interject here and prove that it is in fact Toko who didn't kill Chihiro for a few reasons. Firstly, Chihiro is seen as female, and Genocide Jack only ever kills men. Secondly, the body's positioned differently, with Genocide Jack using her scissors to stab through the hands, meanwhile Chihiro was held up by an extension cord. Thirdly, Chihiro was killed with a blow to the head, while Genocide Jack always kills people by stabbing with her scissors, which she has on hand. Considering she's always succeeded in killing people one specific way, it wouldn't make much sense to randomly change her killing method that she hasn't done before. Light would then push the suspicion onto Byakuya, due to being one of the few people who knew of the Genocide Jack cases, and the extension cord holding Chihiro up being the one that Byakuya used. Light would also likely mention the fact that the crime scene was likely moved. This is due to the fact that the boys' locker room and the girls' locker room posters were switched, and the mat with Sakura's coffee stain on it had been moved to the boys' locker room. As soon as the conversation talks about the change of murder scene, Byakuya goes from being confident to shocked, as L and Light would note that. L at this point would likely bring up that Chihiro is actually a man, thus the problem of him getting into the boys' locker room in the first place is not an issue. I think he would figure this out due to him being extremely perceptive and would likely notice Mondo due to the way that Mondo talks. Mondo is super loud, and Mondo refers to women and men separately, referring to guys as dudes, and meanwhile he refers to women as chick. Considering the body is also right there, you could argue that L could just check up on it as well, and since, Mondo referred to Chihiro as a dude after the death happened, which would also just place further suspicion on Mondo, as he knew something that no one else knew. Hifumi would also bring up that he found Chihiro's handbook, however it was broken and in the sauna. This is strange because handbooks are really hard to break, and the two of them have been broken in quick succession, as the dead people's handbooks are on display and all work bar one. Monokuma would then reveal that there's a weak spot in the handbooks, that being very high temperatures. Ironically, the only one who would know who the killer is at this point is Taka, being Mondo's best friend, and knowing Taka, he wouldn't expose Mondo as the killer. Either way, Light would likely ask everyone to just show their handbooks to see if they work or not, and would eventually just find out that Mondo has Leon's handbook, which would add even more suspicion to him. I do think that this would be enough to get him voted as the murderer, but there's actually a fair chance that there isn't enough evidence for him here to get caught, although you could very well argue that L or Light does what Kyoko did and manipulate Mondo to accidentally revealing too much and exposing his guilt. Mondo is then executed. In Case 3, the third floor is made open, along with the nurse's office. One of the big things here is either L or Light would find a picture of Mondo, Leon, or Chihiro in the supply room, which would definitely throw them off guard because it's a picture of them in a place that does not look like Hope's Peak, despite never attending school together. They would also find Hifumi's camera, despite Hifumi never being able to access this place before. Speaking of being found, Alter Ego would be found in the bathhouse, which was previously the broken laptop. However, Chihiro, being the ultimate programmer, was able to get it working again and even create his own AI, replicating him. The group would talk to Alter Ego and get it to start scanning the files on the computer for clues. But after a while, they'd have to decide what to do with Alter Ego. I don't think they would just leave Alter Ego in the bathhouse, since it could be found by people and be used, especially by Hifumi, which would bring attention to it from the mastermind, which is not what the group want at all. I think a good solution is L being able to take it and putting it in his bathroom, as, well, the dorms do have cameras, the bathrooms don't really have any cameras in sight, so considering his good acting skills as well and manipulation tactics, he could very easily both protect it and also not bring suspicion when using it. However, this brings up the important point of Taka, as Taka in canon goes to see Alter Ego and ends up having an epiphany due to Alter Ego making him feel better. And with L's lack of empathy, he's not going to let Taka do such a thing, and Taka will remain just a soulless, depressed person. The next motive would be revealed: $10 million. This would get Celeste to plan her murders. Personally, I think she would manipulate Taka into trying to kill L, in the same way she manipulated Hifumi into killing Taka in canon, using Alter Ego as leverage. However, L's caution, intellect, and the fact he knows martial arts, and the fact that Taka is a depressed shell of his former self, I doubt that Taka's going to be able to pull it off. Celeste would then likely manipulate Hifumi into killing Taka due to Hifumi also being able to easily be able to manipulate it, and also being one of the only other ones having that much of an attachment to Alter Ego. It would also get rid of Taka, who knows about Celeste trying to kill someone, and with this, the canon events would occur. The trial here is actually a pretty simple one. The main suspect is Hiro, due to being the only one without an alibi and being the only one who could fit in the Robo Justice costume, which was supposedly worn by the culprit. However, Not only could Hiro not get into the suit by himself, requiring someone to clasp it shut from the outside, but despite the fact that the blueprints of the suit were found in Hiro's room, the handwriting doesn't match it in the slightest. Celeste would actually be very suspicious due to being uncharacteristically hasty to get a verdict as fast as possible, along with Byakuya pointing out the fact that during the investigation, she already seemed to know there were 2 victims despite only having seen 1 dead body. There's also the fact that Light or L may have just pointed out that Hifumi was playing dead the whole time, before actually having died, which would throw another spanner into the works. The picture of Robo Justice taking Hifumi away can also be easily explained, as Hiro was unconscious, and due to how the Robo Justice was made, it doesn't bend at the waist, so he could have been positioned in such a way to take a picture. Hifumi's last words also contradict what he normally talks like, as he calls people by their surnames, yet he calls the person who killed him Yasuhiro. L points out that no one knows Celeste's last name and would ask Celeste to show her e-handbook, which would display her name after some resistance, and would get exposed as the one who killed Hifumi, and the one who got Hifumi to kill Taka. Celeste would then be executed. The 4th floor is made available, and it's noteworthy because it's the first time in the place where something's been made open, yet some rooms are still locked, with the data center and the headmaster's room being locked. The only noteworthy thing is the chem lab having poisons in it. A picture of Celeste, Sayaka and Hifumi would also be found too, which would further be very strange. Alter Ego reveals some information they found, talking about Hope's Peak having shut down 1 year ago due to a tragedy that happened, and with the headmaster likely being in his late 30s. After this, Monokuma reveals that Sakura is the traitor, someone who's been giving the mastermind information on the group and being blackmailed because of this. By doing this, it creates another motive for murder due to Sakura betraying the group. Genocide Jack hurts Hina because Hina stands up for Sakura, which gets Sakura super pissed off, which sets in motion the 4th case. Alter Ego asks L if he can be moved to a place with internet so he can get more information, and L would move him to the secret room in the boys' bathroom. Soon after, Hina goes and gets L and Light and shows them Sakura, who is slumped over in a seat in a barricaded room. After breaking in, Sakura would be confirmed dead. Notably, Sakura had suffered 2 head wounds and vomited violently. Due to having vomited blood violently so much, it would be likely to assume that the 2 head blows weren't what killed her. Due to L and Light seeing the chem lab having poisons in it, it is pretty obvious what would have killed her. The only real suspect here is Hina, who tried to make it look like she was the one who killed Sakura, but L would likely see through this due to how poor of a job she does, if I'm being honest. Sakura's suicide note would also be brought to light, pun intended, and L and maybe Light would note the fact that Sakura said that she would attack the headmaster even after death. L would search the 4th floor and find the headmaster's room unlocked, due to the fact that Sakura had broken into it. L would gain access to the complete map of Hope's Peak, files on a 16th student named Mukuro Ikosaba, and also the Monokuma key, a key which can allow him to unlock any door. Monokuma also destroys Alter Ego, revealing that he knew about him from the beginning, but didn't like that Alter Ego was linked up to the internet. This part of the story is very interesting, as this is how the story would end. I want to go through this because there are 7 different plausible endings, possibly more, as to what could happen here. But I'll get started. The 5th floor gets opened up and not much noteworthy is there, besides the fact there's a classroom that looks like a murder scene and the biolab is locked. There's also the fact that in the garden there's a pickaxe with the words Crazy Diamond on it, showing it belonged to Mondo. A sharp knife is found, and honestly, it's hard to say what would be done with it. I think either L or Light would take it with their persuasion gills for safekeeping, but Light would likely convince L that he should take it, considering L took Alter Ego and ended up having it being destroyed. Now, this is where L's ultimate ability first comes into play. If L is the ultimate detective, he would have no memory of it, considering the ultimate detective memory would have been removed by the mastermind, seeing it as a threat. With this, Byakuya would take away L's dorm key off of him in order to try and reveal his ultimate to him, alas but still can't. Even if L, is locked out of his room, the Monokuma key would allow him to get into his room anyways, and if he is the unlucky student, then this wouldn't happen to him. Here comes another complicated part. If L and Light are working together, they would likely confide what they've found within each other, which means that L would know of the 16th student and L having the Monokuma key. More on that later. Then the mastermind goes to kill L in his sleep with the plan of taking out two of the biggest thorns in his side, planning to frame L. The two ways this goes is either 1, Light gets killed in his sleep and L gets framed, or Light is able to react fast enough to scare the mastermind off. The second option isn't actually that too far-fetched, considering in Death Note, Light sets traps to safeguard him in the Death Note in his room, so you could argue that would give him enough time to react and scare them off. While this happens, L would spend his time researching on the second dorm floor, being able to open it now with Monokuma's key. He would notice that there are no cameras or surveillance and would look around the teachers' lounge and locker rooms. On the computer, he would discover that the ultimate despair is the one behind it all, and is not just one person but multiple people. He would also check the lockers, scanning his handbook against all of them. Eventually opening one, he would find some of his own personal belongings and notebook in there, talking about the Kira investigation during his time at Hope's Peak. Of course, he has no memory of having written this, but it's unquestionably his handwriting, and it contains stuff only he would know. With this, along with the pictures of the students from earlier, you could argue that L would be able to deduce that his memory had been taken from him there and then, which would be further backed up if he is the ultimate detective, as he would have already known that his memory had been altered. L would then return in time for the investigation, or late to the class trial like Kyoko, due to not hearing the announcements due to the lack of monitors. In the first scenario, Light's body is found alongside Mukuro's body, which then explodes. The group would assume L did it, seeing that he's literally the only one without an alibi in the group, and the entire group of 4 were with each other the entire time that night, so L would get voted and be executed. Everything would go according to the Master's plan, and the mystery of the school would never be found. Unless L survives, which I'll get to that later. In the second scenario, L would show up in the trial as the obvious suspect due to Hina, Toko, Hiro, Byakuya all having alibis. Light would also have the same choice that Mikoto has in canon here if he is working with L. If he's working with L, it would also depend if he was evil or good Light. In option 1, evil Light would let L be executed. With no one left to investigate him, he would very easily get out of the school, since there are only 3 idiots and 1 smart person left besides him. You could very easily kill Byakuya and then manipulate the rest into voting someone else, which then means he could leave the school and continue being Kira. He should be able to be far above Byakuya in terms of intelligence as well. The easiest way to explain this is that Byakuya at a young age was able to solve unknown police mysteries. Well, by comparison, L at the same age was stopping world wars via manipulation and tactics, so L and Light are just far above Byakuya in terms of intellect. The thing is, though, Mikoto was able to survive his execution, but Kyoko wasn't in the alternate ending, which some theorise is because Mikoto is the ultimate lucky student. This is why I made such a big deal out of it, as if L is the ultimate lucky student, he may survive, dropping into the garbage disposal below. The only question then is if L escapes using the Monokuma key before Light can do his plan, which again is only a thing if L is the ultimate lucky student, which I'll get to later. If good Light is used, he'll probably trust L and not point out the fact he could have gotten into his own room with the Monokuma key. However, with this, Light would end up getting voted, as the group would see no way that L could have killed Mukuro, and Light is the only one that could have. Light would then be executed. Now on to the third option, where L and Light are not working together, and it doesn't really matter what version of Light you're using here, because the outcome is the same. This is due to the fact that it would basically be a showdown of both of them trying to outwit the other, trying to prove that the other one is guilty. But this time, L has an advantage, due to having the insurmountable wall of trying to prove that he could access his own room, despite Byakuya having his room key. There's debates between who's smarter between the two. Death Note How to Read states that Light is smarter, but it is contested due to the possibility of the mistranslation, and the fact that the databook also states that Nier is smarter than L, which is just highly contradicted in the main story. Besides, L has an advantage here, and would likely get the better of Light here. Light would get executed and basically merge the scenarios 2 and 3 into one. This will basically be different depending on what scenario you think is likely. Covering the first scenario where evil light is in use but L is able to escape before L commits his crimes, L would directly confront Monokuma and manipulate him into giving him a retrial for Mukuro. Due to the fact that the trial was staged, and the fact that the killing game is being projected everywhere in the world, killing L here would only serve to prove to the audience that he was right, and that as Monokuma had to break his own rules and failed to succeed at showing what the goal of the killing game was, to prove that despair is above hope. Oh, by the way, yeah, the killing game is being, sent around the entire world as well. I kind of forgot to mention that too, but it was only in the last case. Monokuma accepts this and adds another layer to it. If L and the rest of the group can find out the entire secret to the school, only then they will win. But if the rest of the school will get opened up to compensate. L would then be up back with the group and explain the situation with Light being secretly fuming. The rest of the school would then be opened up, with Light being able to go into the teacher's lounge and maybe hack into the computer. This is due to him being able to hack into police files during the Kira investigation, but you could argue this is because of him taking advantage of the fact that his father works in the police. But if he manages to break in, he would find a hidden room again, with a DVD, the headmaster's handbook, and the dead remains of the headmaster, proving that the headmaster is not the mastermind. The DVD, when played, will show everyone talking to the headmaster and agreeing to stay in Hope's Peak forever, which no one would have no memory of, and would further prove L's line of thinking that they lost their memories. The video cuts off in the DVD player itself breaking, however, as Monokuma breaks it just before Junko is shown, raising suspicion as to why he would be hiding Junko's interview in specific. L and Light would then go to the biolab and get a massive clue. The biolab basically acts as a morgue for storing bodies. However, they notice that only 9 bodies are being stored, despite the fact there were 10 deaths. Monokuma would give out his hints, and likely L and Light would not take it, as it would just cause disruption, and it does do that within the other 4 people there. Then, the 2 of them would go to the data center, which they would then get into the Monokuma door within the data center. They'd find the station which controls Monokuma. Now, Light could hack into it and completely break Monokuma if you think he can hack, but considering Monokuma is highly complex, it might not even be possible. If he is able to break Monokuma, it would force the mastermind to reveal themselves in order to do anything, showing that Junko is in fact alive and Mukuro is the one that was killed in case 1, not Junko. If you go under the scenario where L survives execution, but Light is murdered, you'd be able to very easily prove that Junko is still the mastermind, even without breaking Monokuma to the state of, Mukuro's body and the metric of the other ton of clues. The debate would come down to who killed Light. Well, Junko is quite good at manipulation, L is just on a whole other level in terms of intelligence feats, and would be able to outwit Junko, being able to get more votes on her in the class trial, killing her and setting them all free from the school, but at the cost of Light's life. In the scenario where evil Light and L are both alive, either Junko would either be proven to be alive before the trial, or it'd be proven mid-trial with their metric tons of evidence. It'd basically just go as canon, but with Junko not being able to manipulate Light or L into despair. With Light and L's combined manipulation, they'd be able to manipulate the group into the rest of them into having more hope and being able to vote out Junko, and the battle of L versus Kira would continue in the outside world again. In the third scenario here, L lives and Light is executed. No new locations are opened up afterwards, however. Either L would confront Monokuma, as he did in the last example, or he would not, which gives another 2 split paths. Here, when he manipulates Monokuma into doing the retrial, it would go the same as normal until you get to the Monokuma room. L would notice that the mastermind is likely hiding under the trapdoor beneath the chair. To likely stop them opening the trapdoor, it would be locked as well, and in order to stop the room from being locked once he leaves, he would call in Hina, who's right next door, to stay in the Monokuma room and see if the Monokuma key works. Even if breaking into the trapdoor is against school regulations and L dies, Hina would know who the mastermind truly is. However, as shown in the canon ending, Hina, Byakuya, Hiro and Toko would fall into despair without anyone to help them out, and they'd be stuck in the school forever. However, if they do get able to break into the trapdoor using the Monokuma key, or in the situation where L doesn't manipulate Monokuma and just doesn't die, He would still just go on to notice the inconsistencies with the bodies, and would very easily be able to solve that the Junko he saw die in case 1 was actually Muroko, due to Muroko sharing the same body features as that Junko, but couldn't be able to do anything about it since the trial was over. However, he would know that the Mastermind is willing to get involved, and the Mastermind is Junko. In the meantime, the Mastermind would try and frame him again in order to get rid of him. But this would be very hard to do, as L would have learned from his past mistake and has an alibi, sticking close to everyone else. Realistically, the best one to kill off to frame L would be Byakuya, due to him by far being the smartest of the remaining people there. However, this might actually be better for L, since he can very easily manipulate the other 3 with just more efficiency. It's also unclear what would happen here, since this is a completely unseen storyline, so maybe you can write a fanfic for something of this, I don't know. Either way, L would at least be able to prove that Junko is the Mastermind, and the Mastermind is willing to get involved in the murders, which would further help him when he has to face off against Junko in the class trial. This video took ages to make, so make sure to like, subscribe, comment below your opinions on this, and if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you all next time.